Today, we begin our 2022-2023 season evaluations. And on today's episode, we're going to begin with the breakout star of this year's Dallas Stars team, Jason Robertson. We'll talk about the highs of his season, the lows of his season, and what we can expect from Jason Robertson moving forward. All of this and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Monday, June 5th. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by, making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We are always free and available no matter where or how you choose to listen. And today, like I said, we are kicking off our player evaluation series from the past season, going player by player. We might not get to all of them, but we certainly will be discussing the big names, of course, starting today with Jason Robertson. And here's kind of how these are going to go. We're going to spend the first segment talking about the best parts of their season. And then the second segment, we'll discuss maybe the quote unquote worst parts of the season, or maybe, areas of concern for the respective player that we're discussing. And then in the final segment, we'll discuss the expectations for them going forward, for players that are under contract and coming back, what we expect from them, guys that are free agents. Is the team going to re-sign them? Are they going elsewhere? So on and so forth. And we'll also be getting some audience participation as well. We'll mention what you guys think. Be on the lookout on Twitter. I'll be putting up a poll for each player that I'm going to discuss, and you can give them a letter grade, either an A, B, C, or an F. For the season grades, and we'll talk about that with Jason Robertson here in a second. But now that you guys know the ground rules, let's jump into the first season evaluation with Jason Robertson. And what a fantastic year, for lack of a better term. I mean, Jason Robertson is a player that went from, is he going to be on the team, to, wow, I mean, this guy's already earned his next contract a few years down the line. I mean, we all remember at this time last year wondering, okay, what is the next step for Jason Robertson look like, just in terms of contract extension? How much money does he deserve? How much money does the team have? So on and so forth. And we kind of had to sweat it out throughout the summer. He missed the entirety of the preseason. He missed training camp. But then right before the regular season got started, the news broke that he had been signed to a contract extension. And if we're being honest with ourselves, he's already being underpaid, it seems, for his services. He played all 82 games this past season and scored 46 goals, 63 assists, a total of 109 points, shattering Mike Modano's single-season points record in Dallas Stars history. And now Jason Robertson is the only Dallas Star to score 100-plus points in a regular season campaign. Just a phenomenal, stupendous year from number 21 offensively. Did everything you could have asked and more in terms of goal scoring and offensive production. A key piece in what was the best line in hockey in 2022-2023. He truly took that step this year to become an NHL superstar. We all remember early on in the season when the goal race was between him and Connor McDavid, and then unfortunately McDavid decided to remind us that he's the best player on the planet. But there was a stretch there for a little bit early on in the season where the discussion was, is Jason Robertson an MVP candidate? Can this guy win the Hart Trophy? And again, McDavid then flexed his muscles, but Jason Robertson stayed pretty consistent throughout the entirety of the year, and 109 points, 46 goals, absolutely nothing to scoff at. An incredible season offensively from a third-year player. He's just a gamer who is going to get better with every passing season. And a lot of you guys seemed to see eye to eye with me on this. I went to Twitter and asked the people what they thought of Jason Robertson's season. With a letter grade, again, A, B, C, and F. We had over 1,200 votes, which is super cool. Thank you to everyone who voted on the poll on Twitter. 77% of the 1,214 votes said that Jason Robertson had an A grade of a season. 20.3% said he had a B season, and then 1.6% C, 1.1% F. So it seems to be a pretty general consensus that Jason Robertson had a phenomenal season, and he's well on his way to paving his own legacy like Mike Modano did before him as potentially one of the greatest American-born players to play the sport. And it's crazy that he could be doing it in the same organization that Modano spent so many years dominating the league. And it's two players that dominate the game in different ways. Modano was more a guy who could burn you with his speed, almost like what you would see maybe from a Rope Hintz. But Jason Robertson, while he's not the worst skater on the team, he's certainly not the best skater on the team, but he can just burn you in so many ways. He can snipe shots. He can score down low. He's an aggressive player offensively, just does it different than Mike Modano, but does it in a way that is incredibly fun to watch and just a treat of a player to see on the ice night in and night out, because it always seems like he has something up his sleeve and just leaves audiences in awe with his scoring ability and his knack for connecting with his teammates. Again, with a part of the best line in hockey with Hintz and Pavelski, and also a key piece to what was one of the best power plays in the NHL for the majority of the season with that top line, Jamie Benn and Miro Heiskanen. Jason Robertson really just a threat to score from anywhere on the ice. Opponents always having to be mindful of him, so it's incredible that the Stars were able to get him for all 82 games in the regular season, even though a few days before the regular season started, they were unsure if he was going to be on the roster and able to play. So many good things to talk about with Jason Robertson this season. Just, again, an absolute treat to watch on the ice. And, again, only year 3 of his career. And he's, again, just taking step after step after step and finding ways to improve and develop his game year after year. So there's plenty to look forward to. But, again, you talk about the 20.3% saying that he had a B season rather than an A. And a lot of people did sound off in the comments down below. And it's pretty interesting to hear some of the thoughts that people had to say as we approach the next segment to talk about where Jason Robertson can improve his game. And we'll dive into that here coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is the perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. To all the everydayers out there making Locked On Stars part of your daily routine, genuine thank you from me as we continue to chug along now through the offseason, the NHL season in general, starting to wind down a little bit as we're now, a game into the Stanley Cup Finals. I believe by the time you're hearing this, it is the day of Game 2 between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers. So the NHL season in general almost over, but the Dallas Stars in full off-season mode. And that includes this podcast as we are breaking down the seasons of individual players. And we are talking about Jason Robertson today. We've discussed all the great things he did this year. And there are so many great things that he did. But every player, as great as they are, they carry some baggage. And no one is perfect at their jobs, including athletes. I know I'm not perfect at my job. Chances are you're probably not perfect at your job either. And so, when we do these segments here where we're, talking about the quote unquote negatives of these players, it's not in a way to attack them or tear them down. I think you can be critical of people that, you watch night in and night out. Jason Robertson played all 82 regular season games plus, 19 playoff games. And I watched every single one of them, pretty much watched every shift he played. So I think it's fair to say that there's going to be some imperfections and some things that need to be discussed. And so, again, not just with Jason Robertson, but with all the players we discuss. This isn't in a tear-down manner or a way to look to criticize them unfairly. But I do think that it is important to keep our expectations and our reality grounded as we look at people that we at the end of the day, admire and respect. And I think that fits the billing for Jason Robertson. And really, the biggest criticism that I think a lot of people had of Jason Robertson this season was his performance in the playoffs. And really, I think this is an even grander scale of things that would happen at times throughout the regular season. If we're being honest, Robo had a tendency from time to time to go cold for consecutive games. And I think that unfortunately happened in the postseason. He would go on these stretches where he would just be on a tear. He'd have 4 points across 2 games, or 6 or 7 points across 3 games, just unrealistic video game type numbers. But then there'd be stretches where he'd go 2, 3, 4 games without a point, no goals, no assists, but he'd be out there skating, out there playing, just not able to get his name on the score sheet. So it was just kind of up and down with Jason Robertson. When he was hot, he was nearly impossible to stop. But when he was cold, man, did it show. And I think it showed at its absolute worst in the postseason, because he was getting his chances. He was getting opportunities to shoot the puck. He just couldn't bury it. And so you look and you say, well, yeah, I mean, he had a great regular season, but he fell short in the postseason. Again, that's what a lot of people mentioned on Twitter. They said, well, great regular season, but bad postseason. So that's why I'm giving him a B grade, or even, some people, I think that was the reasoning for their C grade. And I get it, but I feel like it's also unfair to say he was invisible in the playoffs when he had 18 points in 19 games. However, I do think that you tend to expect more from your superstar players. So I think that 2 things can be true at once, that we can say, well, he did have nearly a point per game throughout the postseason, but also you'd like to see more production and you have higher expectations for your better player. You would have really liked to have seen him be able to take over games and really take over series, like we saw, Matthew Tkachuk do several times on the Panthers' race to the Stanley Cup final through the Eastern Conference, or even what Jack Eichel's doing with Vegas, or, even Rope Hintz with the Dallas Stars. You can say Rope Hintz really took over that series against the Minnesota Wild. And you can really just look all around the league, even though their playoff run was cut short. McDavid, Draisaitl, especially Leon Draisaitl, I mean, he was taking over that series against the Los Angeles Kings. And you really expect Jason Robertson to do that here at some point as his career kind of starts to really get rolling. I mean, he's kind of getting into that phase where he's not really, a young gun anymore. I mean, he's starting to enter veteran status, even though it's only going to be, this year his 4th in the NHL. I mean, the kid gloves have to come off at some point. And so, you look at last year against Calgary, it was a short series compared to how deep the Stars went in 2023. But you say, okay, against Calgary, it was his first round of the playoffs. Calgary was a hard-hitting team, and they really, did their work to help shut down that top line. And so you can forgive, the lack of production there maybe from Jason Robertson, but then he gets his shot and, 3 rounds of the postseason, again, 19 games, nearly 20 games played. And there were just stretches in there where he was absolutely cold, especially against the Seattle Kraken. You feel like maybe that series probably ends a little bit sooner and probably doesn't take the full 7 games if you're able to get a little bit more juice from Jason Robertson in that series. Whenever you want to talk about invisibility, I feel like maybe that's where people remember he would, I think in that series he had a 3-assist game at one point, so he wasn't completely irrelevant, but again, not scoring goals. He started off so strong. He had a goal against the Minnesota Wild. He had a goal against them later in the series, and then just kind of went silent in round 2. And then finally we saw him take form against the Vegas Golden Knights. But unfortunately, it came just a little bit too late, and the rest of the team also just wasn't able to match that production at times throughout the series. So really that's what you want to see from Robertson going forward, is you want to see him find that next level, to take that next step up in the postseason and take over and be a true superstar caliber player like a Connor McDavid, like Sidney Crosby or Alexander Ovechkin back in the day, taking over playoff games and leaving a stamp, leaving their legacy in the playoffs. And I'm not too worried about it long term. I mean, this was only his 2nd round in the dance, and I think that he's got plenty of more trips left in his career. And if he continues to work hard and continues on the trajectory that he's currently on, I see no reason why he can't be one of the most dominant players in the league in the playoffs, somewhere down the line, maybe even as soon as next season. So it can be discouraging in some ways, but I think also it's nice to see that he did find his footing at the end of the playoffs. And, 5 goals against the Vegas Golden Knights and 6 games played, not too shabby. So we know that he can produce in the playoffs. We just need to see it a little bit earlier on, and we need to see it a little bit more often and consistently. But again, that's just going to come with time as he continues to get practice, get experience, and play with his teammates. And it's looking like we're going to get at least one more season of Hintz, Robertson, Pavelski, with Joe Pavelski signing that 1-year extension. So it seems like he's going to be just fine and just where he belongs heading into next season in order to help take that next step to playoff greatness. Well, coming up next, we're going to close out talking about what the expectations for Jason Robertson are going forward. He, of course, is coming back, so there's a little bit to discuss in terms of what the future could look like for number 21, and we'll dive into that coming up next. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day, for making us a part of your daily routine. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. We're wrapping up this postseason evaluation of Jason Robertson, talking about what the next season is going to look like for him and maybe what we want to see improved upon, or maybe some changes made to his game over the offseason. It's hard to pinpoint one thing that Jason Robertson really can work on. It's really hard to pinpoint a lot of things because it seems like he's really good, really great even at a lot of things. Of course, I think there's something to be said about his defensive game. Not a liability on defense, but certainly not, defending from the forward position like you'd see a Rope Hintz or, a Ty Dellandrea do. But, some guys like Dellandrea defend a little bit better, but you're not getting as much offensively. I don't think Robertson is, again, he's not a liability on defense, but that's part of his game that could always improve, and maybe the skating some as well. He's never going to be an absolute speed demon, but you'd like to see him maybe up the game a little bit there and go out on some fast breaks or some breakaway opportunities with Rope Hintz down the line. I think that could be a ton of fun to watch, although it's hard for really anyone on that team, except for maybe Miro Heiskanen, to keep up with Rope Hintz. But defensive positioning and just defense in general, you'd like to see a little bit more from Jason Robertson there. But I think that could be said of just about every forward on the team. But I think I'd like to see Jason Robertson continue to work on his methods of scoring. And we know that he can snipe shots really well. We know that he can score down tight. I know that he had mentioned, last year and all kind of throughout the season on and off that he's working on his one-timer. And we saw it from time to time in this past season, but definitely not a staple of his game like you'd see an Alexander Ovechkin do. So maybe we'll see Jason Robertson continue to work on the one-timer. Maybe we'll see him start to implement some of the Joe Pavelski type of play into his game where he can get down low in front of the crease and maybe tip a few pucks in. I think that that's the mark of a truly great scorer, is they continue to improve their craft. They continue to build their game and not just flatline and be satisfied with where they're at. And I think that we've seen Jason Robertson take those proper steps here throughout the early stages of his career. He always finds a way to get better, and he always finds a way to elevate his game and making defenses miserable in the process. He really just needs to keep doing what he's doing. And I think, he's gotten this far, and I think he's only going to continue to get better if he continues to put in the work that he's been putting in. And of course, hopefully he's able to get some rest and relaxation this offseason. But whatever he's been doing since, the end of the 2021 season, just keep doing that, because it's worked up to this point. He's scored more goals with every passing season. He's scored more points with every passing season, and he's just becoming a more impactful player time after time after time. And again, with a lot of returning faces, a returning coaching staff, I really see no reason why Jason Robertson can't repeat what he did this past year, if not take it even farther. It's not out of the realm of possibility to think that he could be a 50-goal scorer as soon as next season. I feel like he's, just scratching the surface of the records that he can break for this franchise and the heights that this franchise can reach while he's playing at his absolute best. So I, for one, am thrilled that Jason Robertson is coming back. And I think that 22-23 was a promising season, as we know that he is going to be a very good player for this organization for a very, very long time. But that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you so much again for tuning in and making us your first listen every single day. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube. And if you are interested in giving me your thoughts on Jason Robertson, leave them in the YouTube comments down below. I'd love to check them out. And again, be sure to stay up to date on social media as we post polls for you to vote on for different players and give them letter grades. And of course, explain in the replies down below why you gave them the letter grade that you did and what you're expecting from them going forward. Again, we'll be going through a majority of the guys on the roster. Maybe I don't really have a specific order, so we'll just have to see who we're going to be discussing next. But you guys will have to keep an eye out for that. Should be a ton of fun to go through this series. And of course, am very interested to hear what you guys have to say as well. And that's the beauty of a community like this, is I can give my thoughts and give my reasoning for things, and then I can hear what you guys have to say. And it could be something that I've missed entirely or something that I haven't even thought about. So again, let me know on Twitter or in the YouTube comments down below. You can find me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis, or just search for the podcast Locked On Stars on Twitter and Instagram. But I hope you guys enjoy your Monday. Stay safe out there, stay cool, and take care of yourselves. And we'll see you back here tomorrow.